The automated beacon appeared in Earth's orbit on a Tuesday, because of course it did. Humanity's first contact with alien civilization happened on the most mundane day of the week, right between Sarah Chen's morning coffee and her lunch break at the United Earth Space Command headquarters. "Well," she said, staring at the holographic message floating above her desk, "this is either the greatest moment in human history or the beginning of a massive headache." Her AI assistant, Aria, cheerfully noted that it could be both. The beacon's message was simple enough. "Congratulations, humans. You've achieved faster than light travel. Here's your invitation to join the Galactic Council. Please respond within one standard galactic cycle, approximately 3.2 Earth months, to schedule your species introduction." What followed was possibly the most intense period of diplomatic preparation in human history. Leaders argued, scientists theorized, and military commanders like Sarah ran simulation after simulation. The question wasn't just how to present ourselves, it was how much to reveal. "We need to be honest with them," Sarah argued in the final planning session. "Our history, our capabilities, she paused, choosing her words carefully, our particular talent for escalation when threatened." The UN Secretary General nodded gravely. "Agreed, we show them everything. The good and the bad. Let them understand exactly what they're dealing with." The human delegation arrived at the Galactic Council's massive space station exactly 2.9 months later. The station itself was a marvelous structure larger than Earth's moon, housing representatives from over 300 spacefaring civilizations. Sarah, now appointed as humanity's military attaché, couldn't help but whistle at the sight. Their first presentation to the Council was comprehensive. They showed Earth's art, music, and scientific achievements. They demonstrated human kindness, creativity, and resilience. And then, with careful deliberation, they showed humanity's darker side: the wars, the nuclear arms race, the environmental disasters we'd overcome, and the speed with which we could mobilize for conflict. "We feel it's important," Sarah explained to the assembled alien dignitaries, "that you understand our full nature. Humanity excels at creation and destruction in equal measure. We prefer peace, but we are." She smiled thinly, remarkably efficient when peace is not an option. The laughter started with Counselor Zextel of the Arxians, a species that resembled crystalline mantids. Their faceted eyes gleamed with amusement as they chittered to their neighbors. Soon, the entire chamber was filled with various alien sounds of derision. "How charming," Zextel's translator broadcast. "The little primates think they're dangerous." More laughter. "Your species has barely mastered basic FTL travel. You've had atomic weapons for less than 200 years. Some of my personal servants are older than your entire industrial civilization." Sarah maintained her diplomatic smile, even as she noticed the other human representatives tensing. This reaction wasn't unexpected. They'd run simulations for this scenario too. Still, the reality of being so thoroughly dismissed stung. "With all due respect, Counselor," she replied, her voice carrying that particular tone of politeness that humans instinctively recognize as danger, "we're not trying to impress you, we're trying to warn you." This only prompted more laughter. Zextel actually rose from their crystalline seat to make a show of wiping their optical sensors, as if crying from mirth. "Warning us? Oh, this is too entertaining. Tell me, tiny mammal, what could your short-lived species possibly do that would concern the combined might of the Galactic Council?" Sarah's smile didn't waver, but those who knew her well would have recognized the dangerous glint in her eyes. She made a small note on her datapad, a single-word: documentation. Then she looked up at the towering alien and replied with perfect pleasantness, "I suppose, Counselor, we'll all have to wait and see." The dismissive broadcast that Zextel sent across galactic media that evening would, in years to come, be studied as one of the greatest diplomatic blunders in Council history. These humans are barely more than clever animals, playing with technology they can barely understand. What could these short-lived apes possibly do? Sarah saved a copy of that broadcast too. After all, proper documentation would be important later. Much later, historians would note that humanity's first warning to the galaxy had been remarkably clear and straightforward. The fact that no one listened was, as humans would say with dark humor, not humanity's problem. At least, not yet. Admiral James Rodriguez, known as Thunderclap to his crew for his booming voice and perfect timing, had developed a peculiar hobby over the past 5 years. His quarters aboard the U.S. Vigilant contained a holographic display that most visitors assumed was art, a constantly shifting web of red lines and glowing dots spreading across a map of known space. It wasn't art. It was a record of every slight, every accident, every diplomatic mishap that humanity had endured since joining the galactic community. And today he was adding another dot. Computer marked the Procyon trading route as denied access to human vessels he commanded, watching as another red line appeared. Add notation officially listed reason cultural incompatibility with established commerce protocols, actual reason Arxian pressure on local administrators. His XO, Commander Wei, watched from the doorway. That's the 7th major trade route we've been locked out of this month, sir. 8th Rodriguez corrected, his deep voice unusually soft. They denied our application for the Sirius corridor this morning. Cited concerns about human technological reliability, he chuckled, but there was no humor in it. Fascinating how unreliable they find our technology, yet our colonies keep getting raided by pirates who somehow know exactly where our primitive shield generators are located. The latest raid had been particularly bold. 3 Vraxian warships pirates, only in the most technical sense, given their obvious military-grade weaponry, had hit a mining outpost in the asteroid belt. The Council's response to Earth's diplomatic protest had been predictably dismissive. Those savages, Commander Sarah Chen had raged during the emergency conference call, her hologram crackling with interference from her position on Mars base. They actually laughed when I presented the evidence. Counselor Zextel suggested we should be grateful for the learning experience in real space combat. Rodriguez added that incident to his documentation as well. Each dot, each line, each dismissive comment was carefully categorized and cross-referenced. Some might have called it obsessive. Rodriguez called it preparation. The Vraxian raids continued, growing bolder with each success. Earth's colonies developed increasingly sophisticated defense systems, but it was like playing chess when your opponent could see your board and you couldn't see theirs. The pirates always seemed to know exactly when and where to strike. It's almost impressive, Rodriguez remarked during one particularly long night of adding new incidents to his database. They think they're teaching us our place in the galaxy. What they're actually doing is teaching us exactly how their systems work, where their blind spots are, and most importantly, who their real decision makers are. Then came Europa. The colony on Jupiter's moon was primarily a research station, home to 3,000 civilians, mostly families of the scientists studying the moon's subsurface ocean. The Vraxian attack came during the station's night cycle. They didn't just raid this time, they massacred. Rodriguez was in a council session when the news arrived, sitting beside Chen as humanity's military representatives. They watched in silence as the death toll appeared on their secure tablets. Children, elders, medical staff, no military targets. No valuable technology stolen, just slaughter. The Council's response was the final straw. Perhaps Zextel announced to the chamber, their crystalline form sparkling with what humans had learned to recognize as amusement. This will help the humans understand their position in the greater galaxy. Some species simply aren't ready for the responsibilities of full galactic citizenship. Rodriguez stood slowly. The chamber's acoustic design carried his quiet words to every corner. You know what humans call it when someone mistakes our patience for weakness, our restraint for inability. The council translator struggled with his tone. That peculiar human ability to smile while promising violence was still beyond most alien understanding. We call it a teaching opportunity, he continued, still smiling. Computer, send file humanity's response to council regarding Europa incident to all members. The file contained 2 things. First, a complete record of every documented raid, every dismissal, every piece of evidence showing the Council's complicity in the systematic harassment of human colonies. Second, a single-sentence protocol enough is now in effect. As the Council members began receiving the file, Rodriguez turned to leave. Chen fell into step beside him, both of them ignoring the confused murmurs behind them. They still think we're harmless, Chen remarked quietly as they walked toward their ship. Of course they do, Rodriguez replied, his smile finally fading. That's why we let them think our colonies were so badly defended. That's why we let them think they were seeing all our cards. He paused at the airlock. Would you like to know the real reason I earned the nickname Thunderclap, Sarah? I assumed it was your voice. No, it's because by the time you hear the thunder, The lightning has already struck. He pressed his palm to the scanner. Send the signal. Wake up the ghost fleet. It's time to show the galaxy exactly what they've been ignoring. As their ship detached from the council station, Chen could have sworn she heard laughter from the Admiral's quarters. It wasn't a pleasant sound. The Galactic Council's emergency session was interrupted by a peculiar phenomenon: silence. The perpetual background hum of the station's massive engines simply stopped. In the sudden quiet, the soft chime of incoming messages echoed through the chamber like funeral bells. Multiple contacts emerging across all sectors, the Arxian Defense Coordinator announced, their crystalline form vibrating with confusion. They're everywhere. Counselor Zixtel moved to speak, but was cut off by a hologram materializing in the center of the chamber. Admiral James Rodriguez sat in what appeared to be a command chair, but the bridge behind him was unlike any human vessel the Council had documented. The walls seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, and the lighting cast no shadows. Good evening, distinguished Council members. Rodriguez's smile was precisely calibrated to show teeth. I believe now would be an excellent time to discuss humanity's petition regarding the Europa incident. What is the meaning of Zixtel began, but again Rodriguez spoke over them. Computer, initiate display sequence alpha. Let's make sure our friends can see everything clearly. The chamber's holographic systems, supposedly the most secure in known space, were hijacked with embarrassing ease. The view expanded to show the space around the council station, and that's when the impossible became visible. Ships were appearing everywhere, not warping in from hyperspace or emerging from jump points, simply appearing, as if space itself was giving birth to them. The vessels were massive, their hulls seeming to drink in light rather than reflect it. Human ships, hundreds of them, each larger than anything Earth had previously acknowledged possessing. Beautiful, aren't they? Rodriguez's voice carried paternal pride. We call this the Ghost Fleet. They've been waiting in dark space, watching, learning. You see, while you were all laughing at our primitive technology, we were perfecting something rather special: ships that can hide in the dimensional pocket between regular space and hyperspace. Not quite here, not quite there. Just waiting. Commander Chen's voice came from off-screen. Sir, all units report ready. Phase 1 complete. Excellent. Rodriguez leaned forward. Now let's discuss what else you've missed while you were busy mocking us. Display sequence beta, please. The hologram shifted again, this time showing Jupiter's atmosphere, where massive shapes were rising from the gas giant's depths. More ships, these bearing the marks of Earth's civilian research fleet. Then the view changed to the asteroid belt, where what had appeared to be mundane mining operations were transforming, entire asteroids splitting open to reveal shipyards and weapon platforms. Humanity. Rodriguez continued, his voice taking on a lecturer's tone, has a rather interesting relationship with paranoia. We prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. When we joined your council, we didn't come as supplicants hoping for protection. We came as equals offering collaboration. When you chose to interpret our warnings as empty threats, he shrugged. Well, that was your choice. A new alert sounded through the council chamber. The Vraxian Empire's primary shipyard had just gone dark. Not destroyed, simply dark. All communications and power mysteriously absent. Oh, don't worry about that, Rodriguez waved dismissively. That's just a small demonstration. You see those primitive human trading vessels you've been restricting? Each one mapped your systems, identified your weaknesses, planted dormant quantum viruses in your networks. We didn't need your trade routes, we just needed you to think that's what we wanted. The chamber erupted in chaos as more reports flooded in. Human vessels were appearing in supposedly secure systems across the galaxy. The Ghost Fleet hadn't just been hiding in dark space, they'd been positioning themselves for years. The truly amusing part, Rodriguez continued, speaking over the pandemonium, is that we actually tried to warn you. We showed you our history, how humanity can shift from peace to war faster than any known species. We demonstrated our capacity for both creation and destruction. We practically begged you to take us seriously. His smile faded. But you thought it was funny. You found our warnings amusing. Tell me, Counselor Zixtel, are you still laughing? The crystalline alien's translator was silent. No. Then let me explain what happens next. In exactly 1 hour, we will begin systematic operations against every pirate base, hidden shipyard, in secret installation that the Vraxian Empire has been using to attack our colonies. We know where they all are. We've known for years. We just wanted to be thorough in our documentation. Chen stepped into view now, her own smile matching Rodriguez's. We're going to dismantle the entire operation. Not through overwhelming force, though we certainly have that option, but through precise, surgical strikes that will demonstrate exactly what humanity is capable of when pushed too far. Consider this a teaching opportunity, Rodriguez added. You should have listened to our warnings. Now you get to learn why even our own history books serve as warnings. Humanity didn't develop our technology through peaceful exploration alone. We forged it through conflict, refined it through competition, and perfected it through paranoia. The Admiral stood, his full height becoming apparent. The Ghost Fleet will remain visible for exactly 5 minutes, long enough for all your sensors to confirm what you're seeing. Then we vanish again, and you get to spend every moment wondering where we are, what we can see, and what we might do next. This isn't a declaration of war, Chen clarified, though her tone suggested she wouldn't mind if it became one. This is a declaration of consequence. Protocol enough isn't about revenge, it's about correction. You treated us like children playing with toys. Now you get to see what those toys can really do. As promised, 5 minutes later, the Ghost Fleet disappeared. Not with the usual flash of hyperspace transition or the ripple of cloaking technology. They simply ceased to be visible, leaving the Council to wonder if they had ever really been there at all. The final message that played across every screen in Council space was elegant in its simplicity. Lesson 1 begins in 59 minutes. We recommend taking notes. In the sudden darkness of their powerless shipyard, the Vraxian Admiral who had coordinated the Europa massacre finally understood something about humans that the Council had missed. Their warnings hadn't been threats or boasts. They had been mercy. The first lesson in humanity's curriculum of consequences began exactly on schedule. The Vraxian pirate fleet's primary base, hidden in the atmosphere of a gas giant in the Proxima system, simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris field. The entire installation, along with its defending fleet, vanished as if it had never been there. Fascinating, isn't it? Commander Chen's voice echoed through the Council chamber's emergency session. Nobody had seen her enter, yet there she stood at the podium. We call them Terror-class vessels. They don't actually destroy their targets, they just shift them slightly out of phase with normal space-time. Everything's still there, technically, just inaccessible, forever. A hologram materialized, showing a ship that seemed to be made of flowing shadows. The really interesting part is how they bypass planetary shields. You see, your shield technology operates on the assumption that objects can't simply appear inside them. We thought that was a rather limiting perspective. Across the galaxy, more Vraxian installations were discovering exactly how limiting that perspective had been. Terror-class ships materialized inside supposedly impenetrable defense networks, their very presence rewiring the laws of physics in their immediate vicinity. Don't bother trying to scan them, Chen advised as various Council species frantically operated their sensors. They exist in a quantum state that your technology isn't designed to perceive. We had to invent whole new branches of mathematics just to build them. Fun fact, we got the idea from a children's story about walking through walls. The Vraxian representative, finally finding their voice, roared, "This is an act of war." No, Chen corrected pleasantly. This is an act of pest control. Would you like to see what an act of war looks like? She gestured, and the hologram shifted to show the Sol system. Earth's sun was pulsing. Admiral Rodriguez's voice filled the chamber. Time for the Sol Gambit, Commander. What happened next would be debated by xenophysicists for centuries to come. Humanity had apparently built a series of massive structures inside their own sun, not around it, inside it. At Rodriguez's command, these structures activated, temporarily transforming the star into something that defied conventional physics. The resulting controlled solar flare was directed through a network of quantum corridors, emerging simultaneously at every major Vraxian military installation. The energy was precisely calibrated enough to overwhelm shields and disable systems, but not enough to cause casualties. We call it the Solar Symphony, Chen explained to the stunned silence. Turns out you can use a star as a musical instrument if you know exactly how to pluck its strings. This particular note translates roughly to "stop touching our stuff." Counselor Zextel's crystalline form was vibrating at a frequency that indicated extreme distress. Your species, your technology, this is impossible. You are barely capable of FTL travel. No, Chen corrected. We showed you exactly what we wanted you to see. Remember our first warning about how humanity excels at both creation and destruction. We weren't bragging. We were trying to save you from this demonstration. The hologram updated to show the status of Vraxian military assets. In less than an hour, Earth forces had disabled or contained nearly 80% of their capability. Not through brute force, but through applications of physics that most species hadn't even theorized yet. Here's what happens next, Chen continued, her tone shifting to something colder. Every piece of technology we've demonstrated today, it's already obsolete by our standards. These are the defensive systems we developed 5 years ago, while you were all laughing at our primitive ships. Would you like to see what we've invented since then? The chamber erupted in panicked protests. That's what I thought, Chen smiled. To continue the lesson, the Vraxian Empire will immediately cease all military operations. Your fleet will be demilitarized under human supervision. Your leadership will face trial for the Europa massacre. These terms are non-negotiable, but they are, we believe, quite merciful. Merciful, the Vraxian representative sputtered. You've destroyed our entire defense fleet. No, we disabled it, temporarily. Because we're being nice, Chen's smile took on that particular human quality that made other species deeply uncomfortable. If we weren't being nice, we might have demonstrated our offensive capabilities instead of our defensive ones. Counselor Zixtel, their crystalline form still trembling, finally understood. You weren't warning us about your potential, they whispered. You were warning us about your restraint. Finally, Chen sighed. Someone gets it. Yes, Counselor. Everything we've shown you today? This is us being gentle. This is us playing nice. This is us still believing that peaceful cooperation is possible. Her expression hardened. Would you like to see what happens if we stop believing that? The silence in the chamber was deafening. Excellent choice, Chen nodded. Admiral Rodriguez will oversee the Vraxian disarmament. I'll remain here to begin negotiations for humanity's full council membership. I assume there are no objections. Not a single species raised a protest. In the gallery, a junior diplomat from a newly spacefaring race turned to their mentor and whispered, I don't understand. Why did they wait so long to show their true strength? The mentor, whose species had a much longer memory of warfare, replied grimly, because young one, the truly strong don't feel the need to prove anything. When humans warned us about their nature, they weren't threatening us. They were trying to protect us from their wrath. We should have listened. The emergency council session had been running for 72 standard hours. Species that hadn't spoken to each other in centuries were now huddled together, frantically discussing humanity's terms. Commander Chen sat calmly at the human delegation's table, occasionally sipping water and checking her messages as if this were a routine budget meeting. These terms are outrageous. The Vraxian representative was on their 4th different spokesman, the previous 3 having resigned in rapid succession. Full membership? Immediate voting rights? Reparations for alleged? I'm going to stop you right there, Chen interrupted, not looking up from her tablet. First, nothing is alleged. We have documentation of everything. Second, these terms aren't up for negotiation. Third, she finally raised her eyes. You really don't want me to call Admiral Rodriguez back in here? The chamber, which had been buzzing with overlapping translator feeds, fell silent. Now then, Chen continued pleasantly, let's review the situation. In the past 3 days, you've discovered that humanity has technology capable of rewriting the laws of physics, a fleet that can appear anywhere at any time, and the ability to use stars as weapons. You've also learned that we showed remarkable restraint in demonstrating these capabilities. The smart play here is to thank us for our mercy and sign the agreement. Counselor Zixtel's crystalline form had lost much of its luster over the past days. The council must maintain certain protocols. Oh, speaking of protocols, Chen smiled, tapping her tablet. Suddenly, every screen in the chamber began displaying internal communications from every major species government. We should probably discuss how humanity has had access to all your secure networks for the past 5 years. The chaos that erupted was, in Chen's opinion, quite melodious. Species representatives were frantically scanning the displayed messages, their own classified communications, secret directives, hidden agendas all laid bare. How the Arxian security chief's translator practically screeched, "Our quantum encryption," was very impressive. Chen nodded. We had several teams competing to crack it. The winning solution came from a graduate student who was procrastinating on her thesis. Apparently, she found your encryption patterns aesthetically boring and decided to improve them. We've been using her improved version to protect the communications we actually want to keep secret. She stood, finally, and her voice carried that particular tone that humans used when patience was running thin. Let me be perfectly clear, every trade deal you thought you were hiding from us, we knew. Every military secret you thought was secure, we knew. Every backdoor conversation about keeping the primitive humans in their place, we knew, we documented, and we remembered. The silence was absolute. And yet Chen continued, her voice softening slightly. We still chose diplomacy first. We still came to you with warnings instead of weapons. We still tried to give you the chance to accept us as equals. She shook her head. Your response to that mercy is why we're here now. A new document appeared on the screens, the Terran Protocol. It was remarkably simple for a galactic law: never mistake kindness for weakness. Never confuse patience with inability. Never assume you're seeing everything your potential allies or enemies are capable of. This, Chen explained, is your guideline for future relations, not just with humanity, but with all species. Because next time a new civilization joins the galactic community and tries to warn you about their capabilities. She smiled, that particular human smile again. We'll be watching to make sure you listen. The voting was unanimous. It had to be. Humanity had made it clear that unanimity was the only acceptable outcome. Within hours, Earth had full council membership. The Vraxian Empire had begun paying reparations, and a public apology was broadcast across all galactic frequencies. As the session finally closed, the Arxian security chief approached Chen privately. There's one thing I don't understand, they admitted. Why reveal the infiltration now? You could have maintained that advantage. Chen's laugh was genuine. Oh, that's not the real infiltration. That was just what we were willing to show you to make a point. Admiral Rodriguez sends his regards, by the way. He very much enjoyed his time as your deputy undersecretary's aide last year. She walked away, leaving the security chief to frantically review every staff member they'd ever hired, knowing it would do no good. Humanity had made their point: they would always know more than they revealed, always be capable of more than they demonstrated, and always give one warning before they showed exactly why their history books were filled with cautionary tales. The next day, as Chen prepared to return to Earth, she received a message from Rodriguez. Think they've learned their lesson. Her reply was simple: they've learned something. Whether it's the right lesson depends on them. But at least now they're finally paying attention in class. Across the galaxy, species began reviewing their first contact protocols. The Terran Protocol wasn't just added to the law books, it was carved into monuments, taught in schools, and whispered as a warning when someone tries to tell you what they're capable of. Listen. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe isn't the threat you can see, it's the capability someone tried to warn you about, and you were too proud to hear. 10 years after the implementation of the Terran Protocol, the Galactic Council chamber looked quite different. The human aesthetic for efficiency had influenced its redesign. Gone were the ornate decorations and excessive displays of wealth. In their place stood elegant holographic interfaces and practical comfort measures that accommodated all species equally. Admiral Marcus Rodriguez, named for his grandfather and already earning his own reputation as Stormfront, stood at the central podium, facing the representatives of the KT Thrick, the newest spacefaring species to achieve faster-than-light travel. The insectoid species had entered council space with an impressive display of military might, their ships bristling with weapons that they clearly expected to intimidate their galactic neighbors. The KT Thrick ambassadors' mandibles clicked in what their species considered a show of strength as they delivered their opening speech. And with our superior tactical capabilities, we look forward to establishing a prominent position within the Council's hierarchy. The translator rendered their final words with perfect clarity. The chamber remained silent. Every species representative was watching the human admiral, remembering their own species' first encounter with humanity. Several were trying not to smile. "Thank you," Ambassador Marcus said, his voice carrying the same warm tone his grandfather had perfected. "Before we proceed with your application, protocol requires that I share something with you." He gestured, and a hologram appeared, showing scenes from galactic history specifically, the events now known as the humanities warning. 10 years ago, another species stood where you stand now. They thought military power was the measure of civilization. They mistook kindness for weakness. They ignored warnings about capabilities they couldn't see. He smiled, that particular human smile that had become famous across the galaxy. Would you like to know what happened to them? The HFY ambassador's mandibles stopped mid-click as the hologram showed the Terror-class ships, the Sol Gambit, the complete dismantling of a military force that had thought itself invincible. Today, Marcus continued pleasantly, Earth leads the Galactic Defense Force. We maintain peace not through threat of force, but through understanding of power. True power, Ambassador, isn't about showing everything you can do. It's about knowing what you don't have to show. He extended his hand, a human gesture of peace that had become universal protocol. So let me extend humanity's traditional warning: we prefer friendship to force, cooperation to conflict, and peace to power. The choice of which you experience is entirely yours. The HFY ambassador looked around the chamber, noting how every species, even the infamous Vraxians, nodded in solemn agreement. They extended their primary appendage, matching the human gesture. We choose friendship, they said simply. Excellent choice, Marcus replied, his grandfather's famous smile crossing his face. Welcome to galactic civilization. Class is now in session.